Howdy, and welcome to another A Tippling Philosopher video. Today I'm going to speak to you about a book that's fresh off the presses, came out last week. It's my latest book called Why I Am Atheist and Not a Theist. Do you see what I did there? Hilarious wordplay. Atheist, a theist. Nice. How to do knowledge, meaning, and morality in a godless world. So the idea of this book is it's an expression of my entire worldview, starting from the bottom and working upwards. So this is something that's really important to me, which is building up your worldview, not from the top downwards. So I would argue that things like Christianity start with something like the Bible or whatever revelation you have. Start as that as the conclusion, but it's the starting point. So you start from the conclusion and then you work back and try and establish how that conclusion can be true. So you are doing loads of ad hoc rationalizations, loads of sort of piecemeal thinking to be able to work that conclusion into how you understand reality. And that is one of the fundamental problems that I have with Christianity. It's built the wrong way. You're starting at the wrong end. So this book is about starting with your basic building bricks of reality at the bottom and then building your wall upwards and seeing where it goes. And it just so happens that it leads towards atheism, would be my conclusion. But the atheism is the conclusion and not the starting point. So it's how I understand, for example, the most basic things in reality, which for me would be, so the bricks at the bottom of the wall would be abstract ideas. Ideas. What are abstract ideas? What are they made of? How do they come to be? So my conclusion to that little argument would be that they are subjective conceptualizations that take place in the individual mind. And so therefore, when you're talking about these things like truth, like morality, like loyalty, for example, love, a hero, all these abstract ideas, all of those are different abstract ideas. Do they exist in some reality that's outside of our minds, or do they exist in our minds? And when we start to agree with each other on these different ideas, we write them into dictionaries and encyclopedia. That's how I see reality. So if that's the basic fundamental building blocks of reality, and we can park arguments of idealism and more material realism, because I do talk about that in the book, but it actually didn't really make much difference to my worldview as a whole. So therefore, I can just park that. I think it's interesting and a worthy debate, but it doesn't affect the way that I see reality. So anyway, so if you start with abstract ideas are conceptual, I call myself a conceptual nominalist, which is, I believe in conceptual nominalism, whereby all these abstract ideas are concepts in the conceiver's minds. And we try and seek agreement, but essentially they are subjective experiences or subjective concepts about how the world works. So once you've got that, then how does that affect your ideas of, and I split the book into sort of all the areas of philosophy, really. So that's ontology. How do I think, what's the nature of existence? And I then go on to epistemology, which is how we understand knowledge and truth. So if these ideas are conceptual, then how does that affect the way that I go about finding out things about the world and truths about the world? And what is my theory of truth? So I then start going into that, talk about extraordinary claims requiring extraordinary evidence, induction, so the beliefs about the future by looking at things that have taken place in the past, or, inductive probability, and these kind of ideas. After establishing an epistemological framework, I then sort of talk about natural theology, which is why I'm not a theist. So arguments that theism doesn't make any sense. I then start looking at teleology, which is, for me, in this case, it's the meaning of life. How do I interpret the meaning of life given that I don't think a God exists? And then finally, I settle on ideas of morality, and I look at sort of theistic notions of morality, and then I look at my own, how I would go about building up morality. And because at the end of the day, when you have debates with anyone about anything, they always seem to defer to morality at the end. Okay, so we start arguing up here about, should we do this or should we do that? And as soon as you've got a should question, it's, well, that's an ought, that's a moral question. So really, rather than talking about these particulars, we need to talk about these more general ideas of morality. But then if I say, well, if my morality depends in some way on my epistemology, on my natural theology, and on my ontology, then I need to work out those things first. So it's building up this wall. It's this brick building exercise or wall building exercise full of, where your wall is built of these components, these bricks that are themselves individual arguments that in some sense depend on the bricks below them. Anyway, I've written this as a fairly philosophical book, but totally at the intelligent layman. So it's hopefully really readable. It's not sort of hardcore and too philosophically dense. And I'd be really interested in any feedback on the book. I really enjoyed writing it. It was originally going to be a collection of essays I'd previously written, and then I realised that all the essays I'd previously written covered all the different areas of philosophy, and in fact, there's a link between them all, and that link seemed to be conceptual nominalism. This idea of what was at the bottom. And so then I thought, well, actually, just collecting previous writing with no particular objective in mind is fine. But actually, I can really mould these into a really striking project that actually has an objective and has a vision, and actually explains everything that I believe, really, or at least starts to explain everything I believe. You can always go into more and more depth, and I don't go to town in this book because that'll be like a 2,000-page book. So in the end, the project changed from a collection of essays to a collection of essays that I moulded and added to and edited, and that then became laying out my entire worldview. So there you go. I really thank anyone who has got this, and thank anyone who will get it. This is my latest book, Why I Am Atheist and Not Atheist, How to Do Knowledge, Meaning and Morality in a Godless World. I love writing it. I love piecing it all together. And I'll be interested in any feedback. Cheers.